Hello, F1 fans. Welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're with myself, Vasco, and Hari. And in this episode, we are going to be reacting to our 2024 season predictions. How good were we, or rather, how bad were we? We're about to find out. And we're going to start off with the Constructors' Championship. So we're going to go from the bottom team to the top team, and I will start in 10th place. I predicted Haas. They finished 7th. I was 3 places off on that.
Similar for me, I predicted Haas. I expected them to have a very poor season, and I was actually surprised from how competitive their car was, for how consistent they were. Nico Hülkenberg, Kevin Magnussen, they were, especially Nico, they were on a great level. They had great pace. And that is why I'm 3 positions off.
Same goes for me. And in 9th place, I had Williams, which was correct. I think Vasco also got it.
Yeah, I also have Williams at 9th.
I wish I could say the same, but I put Sauber, and I don't know why I'm getting penalized when I predicted Sauber behind Williams, unlike you guys. But yet you got no difference. I got a +1 for Sauber, as I predicted them to be 9th. In 8th, I predicted Williams. They finished 9th once again. I was 1 spot off.
I predicted Stake Sauber team, and they were horrendous throughout the season. Guan Yu Zhou and Valtteri Bottas, nothing spectacular from them. The car was absolutely atrocious, and that is why they almost ended the season with no points, but luckily Guan Yu Zhou saved them in Qatar. But I predicted them 8th, and I was 2 places off.
Same for me. Sauber were off, so bad prediction. And I got in 7th place Alpine, which was 1 off.
In 7th, I predicted RB, also 1 off. My 3rd prediction in a row, 1 off. If only Haas. Oh my god, Haas literally ruined my predictions. But yeah, that's 3 1 off in a row. Vasco.
Alpine, I also have them 7th. I was 1 place off, and this is due to Pierre Gasly and his final few races, which were mesmerizing. And that is why Alpine managed to snatch P6 in the Constructors. And the 3 of us are wrong.
And in 6th place, I got RB, which I overestimated them, honestly. They were 2 places down.
In 6th place, I got it spot on, my first correct prediction, Alpine. Although I didn't expect them to have the season that they did, they still managed to get 6th. I'll take it.
My prediction was the same as Harry. Visa Cash Up RB, they're 2 places off, and rather disappointing seasons from them. A lot of chaos, a lot of stuff going on there. There is still uncertainties about how they're going to proceed for the next season. And I'm sure that in my next year's predictions, they would be much lower than 6th.
And in 5th place, I have another one correct. It's Aston Martin.
I also got 1 correct, and I also put Aston Martin, and I think they were 5th the entire season in no man's land. I think this was the safest prediction, honestly.
I also have Aston Martin 5th. This is the first prediction that all 3 of us have correct. They were like the most mid-team throughout the season. And 5th, like a lot of points difference. Big points gap between them and Mercedes, but also rather big points gap between them and Alpine. And I think that was the safest prediction that we could have made before the start of the season.
For 4th place, Mercedes wasn't a safe prediction, and some people are not sure when I said that, but it's actually correct. I'm not proud, but I'll take the point.
I could have never thought Mercedes were going to finish outside the top 3, but here they are. Who did I predict? I predicted McLaren in 4th, who won the Constructors, but to be fair, who could have expected McLaren to win the Constructors? But that's 3 points off for me.
Well, before the start of the season, I saw something in McLaren. I didn't expect them to win the Constructors' title, but I was sure that they're going to be much better than the previous few years, and that is why I predicted Mercedes to be 4th, and it turned out to be correct. But, moving on to 3rd place, there I have McLaren, and I'm 2 places off because they actually won the Constructors' Championship. They had a really competitive car, and I will take notes for the next season.
In 3rd place, I predicted Mercedes, and that was another incorrect prediction, 1 place off as they finished 4th, obviously. I mean, I guess not being a believer in McLaren turned out to be my downfall for these predictions.
We told you in the beginning of the season, you never believed us.
Next year.
Yeah, similar to Vasco, I also had McLaren, as I didn't expect them to be first, but here we are.
And when David mentioned next year, we should talk about Ferrari and them being second in the Constructors' Championship, meaning one more correct prediction for me, as I correctly guessed that they would be the second best team in Constructors' Championship, and who knows, next year may be their year.
We shall see. I also predicted Ferrari second. It was not to McLaren, however. But yeah, that's my third correct prediction for the constructors. Harry?
Yeah, this is the fourth one I have correct. I'm glad, and it's Ferrari. And for first, I got Red Bull, as I expected them to be dominant again, but they weren't.
Yeah, I think we obviously did not expect that to happen throughout the season. I mean, Red Bull not dominating. I also put Red Bull first, but in the end, 2 places off, they finished P3.
Well, the downfall was critical, and at some point of the season I just realized that they're not going to snatch the Constructors' Championship. They were third, I predicted them to be first, which in the end makes 4 out of 10 correct predictions for me, and 12 places off for the rest of the teams, which I think is pretty respectable result.
Yeah, I also got 12 places off just like you, but with my McLaren and Mercedes swap, that meant that I had 3 correct predictions rather than 4.
I also have 12 places off, so we're equal on that, but me and Vasco lead because of the 4 correct. And we can move on to the Drivers' Championship and start off with 20th place. I got Kevin Magnussen. I expected Haas to be horrible, and he was actually 15th in the standings, so I'm not proud of the start.
Yeah, just for reference for the listeners, we have removed all of the reserve drivers because with our predictions, we obviously had no idea that there were going to be more than 20 drivers throughout this season. In 20th place, I put Logan Sargent, and he finished bottom out of all of the starting drivers from the season. So that's 1 for 1 for me, actually. Great start.
1 for 1 for me too, because I was sure that Logan Sargent is not going to be great this season. I was sure that he's not going to perform, and with this Williams car not being fast enough, I think that was pretty much spot on. So 20th Logan Sargent, first correct prediction. Moving on to 19th, where I had Kevin Magnussen, which turned out to be not that great of a prediction because he managed to finish 15th and Haas car wasn't half bad. So I took 4 places for this.
Yeah, I also took 4 places because I also put Kevin Magnussen, underestimated that Haas, definitely. And yeah, Valtteri Bottas actually finished 19th, and safe to say I was nowhere near on that with Kevin Magnussen.
What can I say? My worst prediction out of all of them, I predicted Nico Hülkenberg to be 19th. He was actually 11th, almost 10th. I don't know what to say. I underestimated Haas so much.
Harry, from the beginning of the season, he was on the anti-hype train for Haas, and this didn't turn out to be that great. But moving on to 18th place, and there I have Guan Yu Zhou, which is another great prediction, which means 2 out of 3. This is not that bad.
I can say the same actually because I also had Zhou Guanyu in P18, and that points finish in Qatar really salvaged this prediction, so I'll take it.
Well, Logan Sargent disappointed me. I believed in him too much. He was 20th, I said 18th. I think I can move on.
Well, I think there should be a saying in Formula 1, never believe North American driver who is number 2 at Williams, because it always turns out to be not great. Moving on to 17th place, where I had Nico Hülkenberg, because I was also on that anti-hype train for Haas, and actually Nico Hülkenberg, he had a mesmerizing season. He was 11th at the end of the season, although he was top 10 for a big part of the season, and I'm quite disappointed because I underestimated him, and he was actually pretty consistent both in qualifying and in races throughout the season, and in every spare moment when he managed to have a competitive car, he was there. He was always in the points at like 9th, 10th, 9th, 10th, and he managed to gather a lot of points, so huge amount of respect for Nico Hülkenberg.
In 17th place, I mean, I don't know how me and Vasco, but we have the same predictions that once again. I had Hülkenberg 17th, he finished 11th. Pretty much everything that Vasco said was true. I underestimated Haas. I didn't underestimate Nico Hülkenberg. I thought he was going to beat Kevin Magnussen, but the season that he had was quite outstanding.
17th, I was the one with the different one, and it's Guan Yu Zhou. He was 18th. I believed in him too much as well. And I'll move on with 16th. It's his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who had a miserable season, honestly. He was 19th. I expected him to be better, but he was outperformed by his teammate.
Well, I have 3 out of 5 here. Spot on for Alex Albon being 16th at the end of the season, which is like probably my best predictions for Formula 1 season ever so far.
Well, we finally differ with Vasco because I put in 16th Yuki Tsunoda, and yeah, he had a good start to the season and racked up a good amount of points and finished P12 in the end, so I'm 4 places off on that. It's not looking great now, but maybe it'll get better with 15th, and actually I'm closer with my 15th place prediction because I predicted Esteban Ocon. He finished 14th, 1 place off, but I'll still take it.
For 15th, I have Valtteri Bottas, and with that bad of a car, with Valtteri's motivation rapidly declining throughout the season, I think this is one of the worst predictions that I have, and I took 4 places for that.
I have the same as David. It's Esteban Ocon, only 1 place difference. I'll take it, it's not that bad. And in 14th, I also have 1 place difference. It's Lance Stroll. And I think that I overestimated Alex Albon. That's why they were like one off.
Someone I overestimated is Valtteri Bottas, who I predicted P14 in the standings, and he ended up scoring 0 points throughout the season. P19, actually, and that is 5 places difference for me.
Well, going to 14th and after that 13th, I just swapped the drivers, and I have Lance Stroll 14th and Esteban Ocon 13th. It was the opposite way, and that is a bit sad, but still I only took 1 point for both of them, and I was pretty close, so I can say that wasn't that bad of a prediction.
They were 1 point actually between them, so yeah, very unlucky. 13th place is a man that I predicted who got fired, and that was Daniel Ricciardo. 4 places off. He actually finished 17th. I expected him to beat Yuki Tsunoda, and he did not get close to that. So very disappointing from Daniel Ricciardo, and yeah, 4 places off for me.
For Daniel Ricciardo, I think this is the worst part of predictions because you never know when they're going to drop somebody mid-season, and that worked out well with Logan Sargent and our predictions because he never managed to get close to the points, and that is why he finished dead last despite Valtteri Bottas having to fight for P11 to get him out of that spot. But for Daniel Ricciardo, that didn't really work because I'm sure that if they didn't drop him, then he would have collected at least a couple more points and he may have been closer. Probably not at the places we're talking about, but he would have been closer to our predictions.
Yeah, 13th place for me, Alex Albon. I already said disappointed because I expected more from him. And in 12th place, I actually have Pierre Gasly, who even performed better than I expected. He was 10th, actually. Incredible season for him, I mean, especially the end of the season.
Yeah, I also had Pierre Gasly 12th, and yeah, he was going to finish there most likely, but he had that incredible run to end the season, and he jumped up to P10, 2 places off for me as well, but overall, a season that I somewhat expected from Pierre Gasly.
Well, for Pierre Gasly, I put a bit more hope in him, and I put him 11th, which was still not enough, as in the last race he managed to get that P10 place, but for P12, I have Yuki Tsunoda, which is my 4th correct prediction so far. And we mentioned everything about Yuki Tsunoda, but I'm really interested to see how his career is going to turn out in the future because I actually like him, although there are some problems with him, as with most of the drivers. But P12 is not that bad in really not competitive RB car. And for Pierre Gasly, only 1 place off, which is a bit unlucky. He deserved that P10 at the end of the season with all his miracle performances.
In terms of P11, for me, I put Alex Albon. This is one of my worst predictions. 5 places off, he finished P16. I was a believer in Alex Albon. I thought he was going to carry this Williams to greater heights. But in the end, 4 points finishes for him across the whole season. That's going to get you P16, and that's going to give me 5 points off.
Vasco already said about Yuki Tsunoda. He's my number 11, only one off, and I think it's not that bad. I was close enough. And we can actually move on to our top 10s now. I'll begin with the horrible one. It's Daniel Ricciardo 10th. I am not proud of this prediction, honestly.
Well, mine is the same, and we're 7 places off. We couldn't have predicted that he would be dropped. Maybe because it is RB and the Red Bull family, we could have predicted, but we expected him to, at least for me, I expected him to be better and to actually compete with Yuki, even beat him. And I expected better car from RB, but nothing of that turned out to be true. And they dropped him mid-season, which means 7 places off, and my worst prediction for the whole series till now.
For me, P10, I put Lance Stroll, and I thought he was going to finish P10 actually because I thought the Aston Martin was going to be much slower than the top 4, but much faster than the bottom teams, the bottom 5 teams. And Lance Stroll was 10th for actually like half of the season, but then he just stopped scoring points whatsoever. He was terrible. The Aston Martin became awful, and I think he was getting knocked out in Q1 very regularly. Terrible season for Lance Stroll. I was 3 places off on that one, but my next prediction is much worse, I would say, and that is 9th place, Oscar Piastri. He finished P4, 2 wins across the season. Outstanding season. It's not like I didn't believe in him. I just thought that the top 8 would simply just score more points than him, but that proved to not be the case at all.
Well, in our case, me and Harry have a correct prediction. We guessed that Fernando Alonso would be best of the rest, and this actually turned out to be right. So, for me, this is the 5th correct prediction so far.
For me, it's the first one. Finally, I've waited long enough. And I'll move on with number 8. It was Oscar Piastri, David already mentioned. I think we underestimated what he did, and it was a great season for Oscar.
Yeah, I put Fernando Alonso in 8th. I thought he was going to at least snag that 8th place, but I didn't think the Aston Martin would fall off that much. So yeah, infuriating that I got Fernando Alonso wrong, but at least it's only one position.
I have predicted the same as Harry, Oscar Piastri 8th, and he had a pretty impressive season, and McLaren, they were much better than I expected, and that is why I have to take 4 points off at this one. Moving on to 7th, and for 7th and 6th place, I am once again really disappointed because I predicted Lewis Hamilton to be 6th and George Russell to be 7th, and it turned out to be the other way around. Like George was 6th and Lewis was 7th. And actually, what was interesting about Mercedes is that they managed to take some wins throughout the season, and their drivers were competitive for most parts of the season. But I expected last season for Lewis to be, at least for him to beat his teammate and manage to secure some great points finishes. But at the end of the season, it turned out that George just took the edge of him and he managed to finish P6. So that is why on both of them, I take 1 point off.
I have the same ones, identical as Vasco, so I don't need to explain further. I think David can go on.
Yeah, P7, I also had George Russell 1 spot off, but my P6 is different and not for a good reason because I had Lando Norris in P6. He finished runner-up 4 spots off. I mean, I didn't think that McLaren would be as good as it was. Lando Norris, I expected him to beat Piastri, but I didn't expect that much of a leap. I think he obviously had his best season to date in F1, and I underestimated him quite a lot, so 4 spots off for me. But now we move on to the top 5, and I had Lewis Hamilton. You guys had him in 6th. I had him in 5th. I thought he was going to perform a little bit better than Lando Norris, but turns out he finished 5 spots behind Lando. But I got him 5th. He finished 7th, 2 places off. What about you guys?
My most disappointing driver of the season actually is 5th in my prediction. Sergio Perez, I didn't expect him to be great throughout this season, but I expected Red Bull's car to be a bit better, and that is why I predicted him in 5th. But throughout the course of the season, we just saw that Checo is so far away of all the 4 competitive teams, and as we mentioned, lack of wins, lack of fight for the podium, I just cannot remember a good qualifying session of Sergio Perez throughout the season, and he was eighth at the end of the season. I was 3 places off and very disappointed with the Mexican driver.
For fifth, I had Lando Norris. Similar to David, I thought he wouldn't have such a great season and actually be in the title fight for most of it. And for fourth, I have Checo Perez. I thought he was gonna be not as bad as he was, same as Vasco. So
For fourth place, I had Carlos Sainz 1 place off. He was 2 points off of fourth place in the end. He had a great season. I mean, unlucky to not get that fourth place. And I guess I'm unlucky that I didn't get this prediction right, 1 spot off. But yeah, very impressed with Sainz. Disappointed that I didn't get this one right, though.
I had belief in Lando Norris, but not that much that he would become a vice champion of the season, and that is why I put him in fourth, expecting that he would even overcome some difficulties and would be much better than I expect, but I didn't expect that level from him, and that is why I'm 2 positions off.
for third and second, I have the Ferrari boys. Third, Carlos Sainz, and second, Charles Leclerc. I expected Ferrari to be closer, like to a title challenge, but I mean, they weren't, so I'm kind of disappointed with my predictions.
Same goes for me. Third place for Carlos Sainz. I think I a bit overestimated him. And second place for Charles Leclerc, who was pretty close and he was consistent throughout the season. But again, it's at no point actually I think that Ferrari were let's say the best team, the team to beat. And that is why that also resonated in their constructors and drivers championship, because they didn't manage to get closer in the drivers and they lost the constructors to McLaren. So yeah, I think they need 1-2 steps more to be where they want to be.
My P3, Sergio Perez, 5 places off. I mean, I've had so many 5 places off, I feel like, at this point. But I thought that Red Bull was going to be a rocket ship once again. And I thought I was going a little pessimistic with that 3rd place. But he had a miserable season. I know the Red Bull was bad, but he was even worse. And 2nd place, just like you guys, I had Charles Leclerc. He was very close to 2nd place. And he had an incredible season, but I would say, did not have the car Lando Norris did throughout the entire season to manage to get that 2nd place. But for 1st place, seeing as we've all not said this person, it means that we've all predicted the world champion, and that was Max Verstappen, another championship for him, his 4th one. And this was a pretty safe prediction before the season started and after it ended up being true once again.
Well, in the end, when we calculate, I have 6 correct predictions and I'm only 38 places off, so I think that these were probably my best predictions like forever for Formula 1, and I'm happy to take it.
I wish I could say the same. I had 3 correct predictions, but I had 54 places off, which is quite terrible for me for F1 predictions. But yeah, at least I got 3 correct. Khari, what about you?
I have only 2 correct. I'm last in this one. And I have a difference of 50, so I'm a little bit better than David, but I'm not proud of my achievement, honestly. These were probably one of my worst predictions ever.
Overall, congratulations to Vasco for winning our predictions between us. I mean, much better than both myself and Khari. Congratulations, Vasco. I hope that next year it will be different. But next year will be our year, as Ferrari like to say. But we shall see.
Well, I'm quite looking forward to our predictions for the next year, because before the start of this season, we actually had a pretty great perspective of most of the teams, like who is going to be where. It turned out to be a bit different, but I think next season would be even more surprising. There would be even more unknowns. So I hope you will be here to discuss with us and you listen to us. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode and these predictions. We are going to make another set of predictions, of course, for 2025. But for now, I think that this is all for today from us, guys. We're looking forward to the next episode. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us and AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook. And stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you, and remember,
If you no longer go for a gap that exists,
You're no longer a racing driver.